Sandra is a member of the Navajo Nation and has worked as an engineer at Sandia National Laboratories for 30 years. She earned her MS from Stanford University in structural engineering and is the recipient of the 2021 Women in Technology Award from the NM Technology Council. Sandra's unique work focused on providing technical assistance to U.S. tribes, and she has mentored 44 technical American Indian and Alaska Native college students. Sandra, so excited to get started and take it away.
Thank you, and welcome to everybody who's joined us, whatever time zone you're on. For me, I'm coming on this platform from Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a member of the Navajo Nation, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my background. With Navajo traditions, and Navajo Nation is the largest tribe in the United States. It covers 3 states, the Arizona, New Mexico, a little bit of Utah area. It's one of the largest land-based tribes. It's also very large in number, around 350 to 400,000 members of my tribe. But what I was taught by my dad, who is a tribal leader, is that when you're asked to talk in a public forum such as this, you need to talk a little bit more about your credentials, because on Navajo Nation, we don't just let anybody get up and talk to an audience in a public fashion. You have to explain a little bit more about yourself. So I did get a Bachelor of Science from the University of New Mexico, a master's degree in structural engineering from Stanford. And as been talked about, I've been an engineer for quite a long time, 33 years actually, 30 years at the current job that I have. You'll hear from what I'm going to tell you is that I just enjoy my career. I've had very good workings and wonderful managers, great people to work with, but you know, every story is not always so rosy as it appears. But I wanted to at least describe to you that raised by a matriarch, my mom, Navajo Nation, we are all about the women. The women lead the clans. All our inheritance is from our mother. I'm born of the Nanishtetachitni clan, the Zuni clan of the Navajo, and I was born as a gift to my dad's clan, the Bitter Water people. I was raised on the Navajo Nation, close, very, very close. It's called a border town, a border to the Navajo tribe itself. But every weekend, my dad was an official, so I would be on tribal lands every Sunday. He had community meetings that he would attend to, and I was outside as a young girl running around. And I think what I take from that experience is to really appreciate the natural beauty of where I was raised. The beautiful Red Rock Canyons of the Gallup, New Mexico area. My home community is called Church Rock, and there's actually a rock because in the Southwest we have many rock formations. And that rock formation looks a little bit like a church. And I think being descriptive of where I'm from may be helpful to you, because we're very interested as tribal people acknowledging our culture, but we very much acknowledge the places that we are from. Some babies, when they're born, you take the umbilical cord and you bury that at your home, on the land, on the tribal lands, on the reservation. And so for my dad, he illustrated that as, although as a leader who lived in a border town, his umbilical cord, his heart, his mind was attached to the Church Rock area. And he actually had to take his case to the Supreme Court on Navajo Nation. And so that's how I explain that it's so important to know where I'm from, the conditions that I grew up with. My dad, being a tribal leader, he instilled in me being a leader at every chance I could, even though I didn't have to step up and lead anything. I was always taught to listen. A leader always listens. From my mom, she was a public health nurse for the Indian Health Service all of her career. And from her, I learned to break different barriers. And so today I wanted to talk more about the philosophy that I was taught as a young girl and as a young woman about the Navajo philosophy of walking in beauty. So it's not just one aspect of physically walking and feeling like you're beautiful. That's too simplistic. It's your mind, your thoughts, your being, and all of you takes on that notion of doing things in a good way, in a positive way. So when you walk in beauty, you're trying to leave a place maybe even more beautiful than it was through your speech, through your actions. And you have to be able to do that in different circumstance. And so today, trying to explain this walking in beauty path that I've been on has been great and wonderful, but there have been some stumbling blocks. So I'll focus a little bit of my talk on that, and you can ask me any questions about something that you hear. For my tribe and being a matriarch in a Navajo, I had to learn that when I went into engineering, I was into a patrilineal world, male-dominated world. And I had to shift my thoughts into how I fit into that situation. And it still has not changed. We don't have as many female leaders as we could and should. So in another sense, because I have different duties beyond a researcher, beyond my work, I've been appointed by the New Mexico governor to serve on my home institution for my undergraduate work, the University of New Mexico. So I am one of the 7 trustees or regents that sets the policy and performance and hiring and firing of the president of the University of New Mexico. And so that is another layer of leadership that I've been able to attain because of my good work and recommendations from others to the governor, and being recognized that and approved by our legislative body, the governing body of New Mexico, is also another point that I wanted to make, is that as you try to do things in your career, hopefully you will be recognized for that. And then these opportunities will start to open for you. But I will say that as you understand where you want to be in life, you also have to think, how do you impact what you're responsible for? So in my job I was a project engineer for a long time, all internal customers to the laboratory I work for. You know, civil engineers, we talk about the infrastructure, we talk about the customer, we talk about listening and how much is it going to cost, when is it going to be done. All of that great career led to many opportunities at my workplace, which culminated to working in strategic planning with the president, laboratory director of where I work. And that's where I learned that leaders get just as nervous as an everyday person, because we are people. If anything, you've got to remember that you may have a position to be a leader or something in management as a director or as, you know, first line manager, but yet we are people, and we do get nervous when there's a lot of important meetings that you're attending or presenting. So that was eye-opening for me, that as a staff member, and I called myself a gopher because I would go for this and go for that. As a staff member, I didn't mind, because I was learning and observing and being comfortable with who I am to be able to work with top-notch leaders and be confident in my work to support them. But as a leader myself, I'm also very aware that I'm being watched. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but being observed. Because another unique piece to my career is, if you take the US workforce that are engineers that are born in the United States, I, as a Native woman engineer, am 1 out of 13,000. So my alma mater, the University of New Mexico, has a basketball arena that the lower level seats about 13,000 people. So that's something I can visualize. If you put 13,000 US engineers in that arena, I would be the only woman who's a Native American. So some people call that a double minority. You're in a double bind as far as representing yourself in the workplace. And so I keep that number in my head, because when I feel like I'm isolated or I'm alone or I don't see people like me in what I do, it's because there aren't any. And I have to admit that it's a very unique circumstance. And at early in my career, I was a little bit uncomfortable with that. And like I said, the word isolated came to mind, but I had to learn how to adapt. How do you feel comfortable when you are the only one? And that's part of where I hope you learned something from me today, is that instead of seeing that as a negative, I turn that, in that Navajo philosophy, to be something I'm very proud of. And I think the other piece to that is that it lends my abilities, my experience, my qualifications to be in very unique circumstance. So the work that I do today, working with tribes across the United States, it's very much a niche. I actually created the job for myself. I started out 20 years ago with a little bit of seed money, and I proved to the sponsor from the federal government that I was capable and able to do the job, and I could relate to tribal members on the tribal lands to help them with renewable energy projects. So technical assistance to the tribe was the base of where I got my start. So over time, it became a full-time position. And over time, I added more and more funding by adding interns. The reason I chose to have interns, and right now I'm going to be close to the 50 person mark of interns that I'm working with, because I've got 2 year-round interns today, and I'm hiring 3 summer interns for in May. We'll get started full-time. So it's really close to 50 interns over 20 years. I'm very proud of the fact that instead of feeling isolated and alone and a low budget, I understood that I could hire interns, very lower cost, easily done. I had 90 days to try to work with a student. Now, one of the things that I did recognize is the students are related to the science, technology, engineering, math fields. They're very selective in what they've chosen to study. And some people have said that I cherry pick, and you can say that, but I'm trying to get the Native American students who are in the STEM fields to work with me for 90 days. And in that sense, I wasn't by myself. I built my own team. And over these years, I've been able to follow their careers. And I am so very proud of the different interns that I've had, including Nora Kata, who's online today. And I thank her profusely for having me get to know the people who put on this forum to be able to talk to you today. I will acknowledge that because of what I do today, about a year ago, I've been invited to be a part of the Women's Committee at the National Academy. And so this is the U.S. National Academy of Science, Engineers, and Medicine. And there's a women's committee that covers all of those national academies focused in on different areas. And there I'm just amazed at the women that are on this committee. They're such at a key point in their career. Many have been the only one in their fields of study for a long time, and they become leaders in different fashion, maybe not a management leader, but a thought leader, an action leader by all that they've done. And so being a part of that group is a very key honor in my mind. But one thing we talked about is topics that we could cover in this next year. And the way I described it is I would like women who are at the higher ranks to tell their stories. That comes back to my Navajo traditions of how do I tell you about what I've done in my career? Rather than a PowerPoint presentation, I'd rather just be here today and tell you my story and tell you in a way that hopefully you can relate to and ask more questions of me. So what I've described to the committee is I want people to tell their story. For Native Americans, that's a way to communicate that they're very comfortable with. And what's interesting is it's not a part of the way that science, math, engineering, technology, medicine is used to sharing information. Even the word sharing can be a very generic way that women use, and I'm a woman, so I'm going to use that word sharing. That's how I convey information, is by sharing, that we get used to the language that we talk about amongst each other, that we don't have to be in our patrilineal workplace and communicate the way it's expected, but we get to communicate the way that we would like and in the form and fashion that we want. And so one of the ideas I've been trying to get more people to understand is that we've talked a long time about glass ceilings, where you're only able to rise up and get through the ranks to a point where you're acknowledged in your career for your work by breaking that ceiling, that you don't just see what's above you. And it's clear you can see it, but you can't get there because that glass is in the way. Well, I want to tell you today that I've broken many glass ceilings, but yet what I did not expect and what I would love for you to ask about is I'm actually finding shards of glass that have come and cut me. And this is not physically cut, but mentally, emotionally, dialogues that I get into conversations that I don't expect, some negativity that I've received. It's like, so when you break something, there's actually some byproduct, which could be hurtful. It could be toxic if you let it. And what I'd love to just understand is that we as women, I have a natural tendency to be nurturing. I'm not going to say all women are, but there's a natural tendency to help, to assist, to help grow, to lead. And I deliberate with the word nurture, that if I acknowledge that something's happening to me of that nature, of shards of glass, that maybe you can relate to what I'm saying. I've had comments when I was early in my career of, well, why do you get that assignment? I'll give you an example. I was given an assignment corporately for the whole laboratory to study a child care center for our laboratory, for all the new employees that were having children, that maybe that would help them, to give some support to them as far as a place to bring their children, and then it would be right near work or right near where they worked. And there were many women that actually said to me, oh, Sandra, you got that assignment because you're planning a child care center for you when you have children. And I thought, no, that is not the reason I have this assignment. The reason I have this assignment, because I asked for it. I want a benefit for all people at the lab. Maybe it's women with young children. Maybe it's the men who have new children. I want them to have this resource. And by the way, I do not have children. I've decided in my career, in my life, not to have children. So having somebody turn something that I thought was a beautiful and interesting assignment to making it like I did it personally for my own gain is one of the shards of glass that I have an example to tell you. It's just not right. And at the time, I didn't confront the person with the way I felt. But as I thought about it, and I'm very analytical, I thought later, why did that bother me so much? And I had to really attribute that to misunderstanding. People aren't understanding that I, as a project manager and as an engineer, take on all kinds of assignments. You can't always make it so personal and internal to you as a personal gain. That was never the case. I think the others, with my role as a regent or a trustee at the University of Mexico, we have public meetings every other month. And there was a point where we had some public comment that was, in my mind, a little too derogatory of our president, who is the first president, woman president, that we've ever had in our 100+ year history of our institution. And I didn't appreciate that they were commenting on what kind of car she drove, what kind of necklace she had, claiming that her pearl necklace that she was wearing that day was like she was above everybody. She was touching her pearls in a fashion that she was just thinking about the students and the faculty and staff as, minions or peons. And I think that's the word they use. And I thought, that's not right. So when I had a chance to comment back, I said, you know what? I wear a necklace usually. And if I was to touch my necklace, it would not be saying, I have this and you don't have that. It's, remember, I was given this gift by one of my relatives because she knows that I do public speaking, that I do presentations, and it reflects my native culture very beautifully. And that's the way I would wear this necklace, not to say I have this and you don't have that. Many crazy misunderstandings that are subtle, but very much unappreciated. And I'll have to let you know that you have to understand, anytime you have a confrontation, when you have a negative situation, you put your personal energy into that. And over time, I've learned I'm not going to fight every fight. Maybe it's not even my fight. And I have to think about it. Do I have the personal energy? Is this relationship important to me? Is this a random colleague or this a stranger that has said something to me? Is it worth my effort? Is it worth something for that people to learn about what they should think differently, to not misinterpret me and who I am? Or is it just let it go because it's not that important? And I've had to do that many a times because I just don't want to get into conversations like that with everybody, especially strangers. I'm not here to educate, someone who's misunderstanding, but in a forum like this, I am more than willing to do that, to help clarify who I am, what I do, and why I do it. And that's part of, I think, taking on that positivity of walking in beauty and conversations that you have. The other, I would say, walking in beauty for me is giving good quality to the work that I do. Because I work with tribes across the United States in various avenues, I am so respectful of those leaders, because many times they've been in a position that they've been appointed or they've been elected, but they choose to serve. And there's appreciation from me. And that experience is probably from my father. He was an elected official and he had to put up with a lot of negativity. And so if I can be a positive force to help them solve a community problem, I'm more than willing to do that. I think that's a part of where I really love to understand what people need as far as solutions. I will have to say there's a balance you have to strike. So I left the lab for about 3 years. I intended not to go back. I had gotten my dream job, or my dream at the time was running a nonprofit that helped me grow as a student, as a Native American in science and technology. And this was the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. The acronym is ACES. You can look that up on their website, and I'll put it in the chat if you'd like, AISES.org. But that's the organization that I belong to. And what was so unique about that, and why I gave so much time and effort, is because they never put anything in front of me that was a block or a hindrance. There was no glass ceiling in that organization for me. I could go at the top level of what I wanted to do to help that organization. And I thought about it, and I wanted to be the executive leader for that organization, called the executive director. And I got the job. And I was a national spokesperson. So I was speaking all the time with corporations about diversity. How do you increase women in the workplace? How do you support underrepresented minorities in the United States? I got to travel to New Zealand and meet Maori folks. Just wonderful opportunities for me to grow and to grow as a person and gain all different types of insights in working with people in very different cultures. Even though tribal communities may seem homogenous, they're not. Every tribe has a very different culture, and many have very distinct languages and distinct histories. So it was insightful for me to be at the top job of what I thought I could do, and the rest of my career retire from that. But lo and behold, I gave everything to that job. And I hate to say this, but sometimes we as women give too much to our jobs, give too much to the work, give of ourselves, to a point that I wound up in the emergency room. I had given every ounce of energy to that organization, and my body said no. I came down very ill, got hit with all kinds of cold and flu because my immunities were down. I gave everything to the job. And I'll give you one evidence. Today, my complexion is a lot lighter. So I'm Navajo, I'm full-blooded Navajo, but I was browner at that time because I became so anemic, it took some of the color out of my face. And so it's interesting that over time, to reflect on that is, Sandra, you cannot keep doing this because it could harm your health. And look, this is what the deities have shown you. You're going to be a little bit lighter in complexion because of all that you gave at one point in time. And the lesson was learned. Don't do that again. There's always a balance between your work, your home life, your relationships, that you just cannot let work have everything of you. You've got to say no. And I've learned that over time. And you'll have to learn to do that too. The other is opportunities will come to you as you gain experience and you've got good credentials and you've got a great, incredible reputation. You'll be sought out, but you cannot take every opportunity. And you're going to have to be a little more strategic in your thinking. So I'm going to leave with a little bit of how do you do strategic planning for yourself. I had a very wonderful mentor. His name is Don Coyes, C-O-Y-I-S, Don. He created a nonprofit for Native American people to become sober. As you might know, now you will know, there's a lot of alcoholism and drug addiction on our tribal lands because of the lack of hope, the lack of opportunity, and many do not have the education that I was able to obtain. And if you don't have education further your career and further your life, sometimes you're held back by that, and you have very dire economic development and family situations, and you don't have as much hope as you might have if you've had opportunities. And to understand from Don and his philosophy, he taught me as a young undergraduate student that it's going to be hard. The STEM fields are hard. Being a only person who looks like me in a field with white males is going to be hard. And so acknowledge that, but also get a vision of where you want to go. So he clearly taught me, he said, do you know where you want to work? And I said, I think I know. He says, so where is that? I said, the Lawrence Livermore National Labs in Livermore, California. He says, that's very specific. Good for you. I said, I know because I visited there and I thought it was a great place to work. Okay, you know what it looks like. Picture that in your head. What does the sky look like? What does the landscape look like? What time of year is it? What does it smell like? And for me, California the air smells sweet because you have so much moisture in the air. And the grass was green because this time of the year, there's a lot of rain that happened in the spring. In the winter and now spring, you have beautiful hills of green grass and wildflowers. I could picture that because I've seen it. And there I am walking to the building where I would work. And on my trip, my field visit, I said, where would a civil engineer work at this laboratory? They said, here's the building, plant engineering. We take care of the infrastructure. And so I had that vision. He says, there you are, your first day. What's in your hands? I said, I've got my purse. I've got my mechanical pencil. I have my calculator because that's what engineers do. We carry that around with us. And I said, I'm going to carry my lunch because I know I'm going to have student loans I have to pay off. So I've got to watch my money. He said, all that is clear to you. Walk in the building and sit down at your desk and you're going to start work. That's how clear you need to have a vision of where you're going to have a future foothold in either a job or a career. Because when things go wrong, when your health goes down, you have to create that image in your mind so that you get through what you're going through now. The pitfall, the hole, the boulder you can't get around, that vision will help you get to that point so that you're very clear of where you want to get. Now, your vision may change over time, but that's okay. That's the way things should be in your life. You grow and you change. I'll give you one of my first bosses. He said, you know what, Sandra, you need to learn to talk about your work with your coworkers. Okay. Next, you need to talk to me about your work. I said, okay, I thought you were observing. You kind of knew what I was doing. He says, yes, I'm observing, but I want you to tell me about your work. By the way, now you need to talk to other managers about your work. Oh, and you need to talk to upper level people about your work. I had no idea, but it all had to do with performance management appraisals. They need to know who you are, what you do. Short and snappy, don't talk their ear off, but they have to be aware. Because at that point in your career, you're being viewed as how great a performer you are, how might you be rewarded with a bonus, how much raise you might get based on your communication, your performance appraisal, written material, knowledge of what your work is about. And so I had that as a great learning. I had no idea. Nobody taught me that. So I'm telling you today, you've got to talk about your work with people who have influence on evaluating your performance. Last, I'm going to leave off with thinking about how to take care of yourself. So you must not overdo things. You've got to take your days off. You've got to rest. I'm learning on the weekends, I just have to rest, and I cannot push with all these activities that people want me to be involved with. I have to say no because my body at my age, I have to give it time to recuperate. And so even getting ready for today, I had a little bit of morning meetings, but I deliberately went to bed early because I needed to be energetic and on my best showing of what I can do in this forum today. And so planning ahead for these things does you a world of difference. Eating right, drinking enough water. Some of these things are basic, but I'm here to remind you they're very, very important. You have got to take care of yourself. The other illustration I'll give you and leave with you is if you're in an airplane and the oxygen comes down and you're supposed to be getting your oxygen, don't help others. Help yourself first. Put the oxygen mask on yourself. Then you can help others. Otherwise, you're going to pass out because you didn't put your oxygen mask on. So that's another illustration for me. It's important for you to take care of yourself. If you don't, you can't help take care of others. You have to be good at taking care of yourself. And I guess I will leave off right there. And I'm hoping we have a whole variety of questions. So thank you. And I look forward to your questions.
Sandra, thank you so much for that. We do have a variety of questions. I was listening so intently on what you were saying, and I would come up with a question myself in the middle of when you were talking, and then you would answer it right after that. And there's so many things that would be so helpful to just take another look at. A couple of things that you said that really stuck with me is you mentioned a mentor you had, Don Coyus. Mm-hmm. He helped you with some strategic planning, it sounded like, for your overall career. And you mentioned your manager and how he said you need to talk more about your work and, you know, around the organization, be snappy, but do it. Did you feel supported by, you know, you have some mentors, but did you feel supported by your male colleagues in your efforts to improve minority representation in STEM while you were going through your career? You've mentioned a couple of mentors, but did you also have that support?
I did. I'll just say I'm lucky. I don't think everybody is lucky. But aside from that, that's important. But what you need to really shore up for yourself is to have personal mentors that are not work related. So my mom was my first mentor as a working mother. She went back for her Bachelor of Science in Nursing when I was little. That's a great example. She's the first one in our family to get a higher education degree. The other, I think, would be I got to meet Mary Ross. And Mary Ross was the first Native American scientist, engineer, rocket scientist. She's featured on a gold coin of the US. That's how important she is. And Mary, I got to talk with her, and she almost made it to her 100th birthday. So again, how fortunate and blessed have I been in my career to have the first Native American woman scientist, engineer, to be my mentor. I mean, that's just gold right there, and she's on a gold coin. I think the other is Henrietta Mann, Dr. Henrietta Mann, wonderful Cheyenne woman who's very cultural. She helped me to learn to be graceful in the way I talk, graceful in the way I communicate with people, how I am around others. Always do it with grace. Don't think yourself too much and don't get a big head. Just be grateful for what you have and try to assist. Now, I just had my 30-year mark at Sandia, and I gave credit to all the managers that I've had at Sandia. They have all been very, very helpful to me. I even got to see a manager that left our lab, and he was at a conference 2 weeks ago. Paul Veers was my manager, and he helped get my promotion to principal member of the technical staff. What does that mean? There's a 4-rung ladder of nerds, and I'm on the 3rd rung of 4. And I'm realistic. I think you need to be realistic about your career. I'm never going to make distinguished. You have to have a lot of research, a lot of credentials, and that's just not me. I love my master's degree. That's all I wanted. I just want to get to work. If I need to write a paper, I will, but that's not the way I've done my career. It's not by writing paper after paper. And I have a few published just because it's interesting work. I like to do. I'm out there in communities. They know me. I have strategic plans that I help with. And then 5 years later, they have hardware grants to get solar panels in a very isolated Alaska village because of what I've been able to help with. And I will say, you know, mentors internally, I'm a 20-year overnight success. I think it's the only way to say it. I've been doing this work for 20 years, right? Now it's like, we need to work with communities. We need to work with communities in need. The US, we have a lot of energy justice and people who want to get their energy costs lowered as a community. And it's like, I've been doing that a long time, I'll tell you. And they really want to know my secret. And I just tell them, basically, you've got to learn to build trust with people. Well, how do you do that? And it's like, well, that's the secret sauce. You're going to have to learn how to build trust with people. I can't teach that to you. So that's how I've been mentored.
And also, Sandra, I'm so struck when you speak because to me, you speak you're very, very illustrative. And so when you speak, I see an image, kind of like you said when you were describing to Don, and he kept asking you, what does it smell like? What does it look like? What do you have in your pocket? And so not only, along the way, but I can see how you have incorporated that in the way that you speak. And it's a pleasure to have conversation with you because we're not only speaking, but also my brain is seeing things. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that, and that's the nature of storytelling. And I learned that when I began public speaking because I'm a natural introvert. So this type of forum is okay because I'm not in front of a live audience. If I am, I have to psych up for it, get my mind mentally there. And if the hardest thing for me is like what they call a meet and greet with strangers, it takes a lot of energy for me to do that. I'll do it, but afterwards I need to be by myself because I've used all that energy to connect with people I don't know. And then I need to be quiet. So you got to learn that about yourself of how you communicate and do what's best for you.
And I think that's a great segue. So we had a question from Laura. She said, I think a lot of us are tired of the mental energy it takes to continually break glass ceilings. So to be in a room and network, but also to break glass ceilings. How do you find the energy to keep going and fighting the good fight? This is interesting to me. And when is it okay to sit back and rest? She goes on to say, I'm particularly interested in your perspective as informed by the Navajo tradition.
So a lot of it has to do with how does it affect people around me? How might it affect my relatives? Let's say the way I put it in the workplace is that, some of this sexual harassment that women go through, they shouldn't have to, but the way I tell gentlemen about this, white males, is that just think about it. I'm telling you what happened to me. Now, what would you think now? You don't know me very well, but I've experienced this. You would think differently if this happened to your daughter in the workplace. You would totally have a different reaction in how you would see that situation because now it's personal. Now it's your offspring. If it was your wife, it was your cousin, that really drives it home that this is not right. How do you make it right? And I have to go back to analyze the situation for what is in it to keep as a relationship. If it's just somebody off the street and they want to argue with you, I will walk away because I don't know you and what you're trying to push on me. And that's the other thing. Some of this information that people want to get and aggravate the situation, it's them. It's about them. It's not about me. They have some stigma about Native women or something that is not me. That's like your thing to deal with. Don't push it on me. I'm not here to inform you about every nuance. I'm just trying to help you understand that we're able to be in the workplace, in society, and be understanding of we all try to contribute. You as a colleague contribute. So you have to also understand how much energy, if it's your colleague, you're going to have to give it some energy because you might not be able to get out of that work group. You may not be able to leave the company. And I will tell you at one point, being sexually harassed on the job, I had to leave the company. There was no out for me. I didn't want to fight. My mom had just passed away. I had just graduated from Stanford University. I had just gotten married, all these personal circumstances. And then people say, you need to fight this. You need to have a lawsuit. It's like, I'm hurting. Personally, I got a lot going on. I'm not taking that fight. I would have won, but I wasn't ready for it. So I left. The way I jokingly say, this Indian had to get out of Dodge City. No way. I'm not going to fight that. They were never going to change. Sometimes you're going to meet people, it's their issue. They are never going to change, no matter how much you try to educate them. That's the time to just walk away.
I have felt the same. I have done the same. I have walked away from a situation that could have been not with sexual harassment, but walking away from everyone saying to me, surely you're going to go to court over this. Actually, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I can't expend that energy. So that I really, really felt that deeply. And also everything else that you have going on. It's not a one track. You said, you just gotten married, your mom had just passed on. Like, that's a lot.
It's a
So
lot.
thank you for that. A
I'll just
question came in.
another point that I don't dwell on that negativity. Otherwise, you'd see this big old chip on this shoulder. And I've met many women who that chip is pretty hard and rock hard. And I tell them, you're giving so much energy to keeping that on your shoulder when you could expend that energy on improving yourself, helping others, helping young people, helping your kids, helping grandkids. Don't hang on to that. It takes too much of energy to hang on. Let it go. And I'm having to work on some of that. Let it go. It doesn't do me
That's
any.
We had a comment come in asking, how do you move beyond the shards? It sounds like you're telling us about it right now. You
Mm-hmm.
have to you have to become you have to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And it can take, years to do that sometimes, but I think it's about wanting.
Yes.
Yeah. Shazia had a question. She said, you talked about negativity that we face on the daily basis. So where did you find the most negativity from, your own community or outside? And why do you think that's the case?
Oh my gosh. It's the one you expect the least. So it was this one job. I was being sexually harassed by two minority gentlemen. Men. They're not even gentlemen. One was my classmate. I'll just say that. Hispanic. I didn't expect that from a man of color. And then there was a tribal member, male. It's like the least I expected was from them to do this to me, one of their own. But it turns out they could not mentally see me as a brown woman in the workplace other than somebody to be used, an object, a woman, whatever. That's the way they viewed women, especially brown women. It's like, you got some serious issues, guys, but that's not me. And I reacted. I deliberately did not look good in the workplace. I didn't wear my makeup. I didn't take care of my hair. I didn't wear nice clothes because I thought if I minimize myself and they don't see me, they'll stop. It didn't stop. And what happened to me? I felt ugly. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't do my work because I didn't feel right. And so that's what I mean. Don't take it on you. It's them. And if they're never going to change, I needed to get away from them. And, years later, they told me briefly something happened to them. They had some disciplinary actions. Like, well, whatever. I've moved on from that.
Right. You just removed yourself from the situation
I
because you can
did.
only, yeah. I mean, you're going into that work environment. You're not feeling good. They're there no matter you have already bent so much by changing your appearance and doing other things. At some point, you just have to walk away.
Mhm.
Definitely.
That's how bad it can get.
That's how bad it can get. Yeah. Okay. Changing gears a little bit, Rosanna asks, do you believe that intuition is important when it comes to decision making? Or should we analyze carefully important life decisions like changing our career path? So you had Don, he talked about strategic planning. Do you also feel like intuition comes a little bit in there? Or what do you think about that?
Oh, I think you need to do both because you've got a brain and you've got a heart, right? You're logically trying to figure out what's going to be work best. How's that all going to come about? I analyze things to death, but then at the point I have to say, not just heart, but what's in my stomach. If something hits in your stomach in a bad way, that's an alarm for yourself. Something's not right. It's making me sick, literally. That's your intuition. Or I don't feel right. I feel stressed. It doesn't seem like this is the way I should be going. That's a feeling, and you have to trust that. And maybe I got that from my mom was very direct. She just was trying to teach me quickly. She died when she was only 55. I think she knew she wasn't going to live that long. So she was really straightforward with me. You've chosen a really tough profession. It's all there are men in that profession. Engineer, civil is a rough crowd. You need to hold yourself up hard and then don't be afraid. You need to be as tough as your fingernail. She can say that, but the situations, it was hard. And, they pierced my fingernail at time. It hurt. But you have to try to say, okay, mom said these days would come, as some songs say, and you move yourself forward. I think having a support system and however you create that is very, very important. I will say, if you have a goal, a vision, be very careful with who you share that with. Because I don't want what happened to me is I shared it with somebody I thought I was close with, but they said, oh my, you're really ambitious, aren't you? You really think that's going to happen, huh? Wow, you think a lot of yourself. It's like, wow, that's not what I want to hear. I want you to say, hey, that sounds interesting. You could probably do that. You'd have to get experience here and there and there. So be careful. Share it with someone who's going to give you good feedback, not be jealous or whatever that thing is they have about you. You don't need that. And the way I talk about this with younger women and students is that character Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, there are Eeyores out there that you've got to get away from. They wear a cloud over their head. Their ears are always down. They even talk negative. They talk, is it a good day? Oh, it's not a good day. I mean, you can probably point to somebody in your life who's an Eeyore. You need to minimize your time with that person because you're going to start having your ears come down. You're going to start talking like that. You're going to say, oh, you're right. It's not sunny today. It's like, well, the sun's going to come out pretty soon. You need that positivity around you. Stay away from the Eeyores.
You heard it here first. I mean, I got probably 4 takeaways during that last answer. I was typing away furiously. You said, do both. You have a brain and a heart, not just a heart. Do what's in your stomach. And I love Eeyore. So if you're wondering, if you need a quick gut check when you're around somebody, how do I feel? Could this potentially be an Eeyore? I think that's great advice. Thank you. So many great questions coming in, Sandra. Aditi asked, do you try to bring some of the Navajo philosophies to other aspects of your work and social commitments? If so, can you please give some examples?
Sure, I maybe commit way too much. People thought at the Board of Regents that I wanted to be the president of the Board of Regents, which, yeah, at one time I wanted to be, but that's not me right now. What I wanted to be was the secretary treasurer because my name will be on every diploma at the University of New Mexico. Begay is a traditional Navajo name, and there was a Navajo part of the administration that signed off on your diploma. I'm a part of that official process. A woman of color signed your diploma. That's how I deliberately looked for something of that nature to make my stamp literally on that document. I think the other is I give to every ACES organization function I can fit in, American Indian Science and Engineering Society. I can't do them all, but I love giving back to them. You know, indirectly, people around me are very observant. So I have cousins. So my cousins, we pull closer. So my women cousins are like my sisters. So their daughters could be my second cousins, but I think of them as my nieces. I have 4 of my nieces, my cousin's daughters, that are engineers. I didn't take any of them aside. I didn't twist any arms. I don't even think I talked to them that much about engineering. You know, this is the curriculum, this is where you should go, this is what you study. None of that. But they're all working engineers right now because they saw what I was doing. I enjoy my job, and it was an educational path that would open up a wonderful career for them. They're doing really well.
What an example. What an example for your whole family. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Earlier, you had said, Sandra, communicate in the way that you want, not in the way that the patrilineal workplace expects. The question that we had come in is, as a manager or a leader, how can you make those you lead to feel comfortable communicating in the way they want, rather than the way the patrilineal workplace expects?
You're going to do that by leading by example. You may have to say, okay, this meeting, I want you, and this is team building, right? Mm-hmm. I want you to tell me a story about your life where, you know, pick a subject and then go around the table and let people tell their story. And you'll find out how people want to communicate. It may be very detailed story, like engineers. It was blue, green, and then turned black. And then it was round and it was square. That's fine. That's the way they communicate. But then you'll have somebody different who will tell you more about the relationships that was in the situation and how this didn't go right, this went great, and they'll get excited, they might have their hands. That's how you bring out natural communication, is by something that is a little bit more informal. Then you start testing the waters by providing that example in your own management chain, saying, I know you want me to present a PowerPoint today, but I'll give you a PowerPoint for the record, but let me just tell you what's going on with my project. And then you get into details. My boss came to me and said, I told him, I'm going to Mescalero Apache for 3 days down southern New Mexico. We're doing a strategic energy plan with the tribal council. Okay, check the box, he knew. On that Saturday of the week, we finished on Friday. On Saturday, he calls me on my cell phone. Sandra, I heard on NPR that the Mescalero Apache are going to do a future based on renewable energy, possibly wind, possibly solar. I said, yeah, Tony, I know. How do you know? I thought you might be interested. I said, Tony, I was there. We did a 90-day action plan with the tribe, and one of their actions was communicate the goals of this session to whoever you want, whoever you think is important. They got a hold of NPR. He heard the story. It came back to me. It's like, yes, we did what we were supposed to do. Action, a lot of action.
A lot of action. And also, I really liked that, how someone asked for something, you can give it for the record, but you also get to communicate in the way that you want, that it works best for you. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes when we go into something, and I've experienced this as well, this really hit home, is you know it's not going to hit the mark if you do it in that way. You just know in your gut. And so you can give them what they want, but you can also change it. So thank you. Thank you. It felt like permission from Sandra, honestly.
Yes,
so,
really.
Thank you. This kicks off some questions about mentoring, which I know that you have a rich history in, also with our Nora. So do you have any advice for people looking to get started in mentoring or hiring interns? What was your process? How do you fit this work into your core responsibilities? How do you find your interners and mentees? So just all kinds of questions. So if you could just talk to us about that, that would be wonderful.
Sure. You got to be creative and think outside the box. So did anybody tell me interns were easy to hire? No, I figured that out. I was in a project that I'm not an electrical engineer. I am not. I don't know solar. So what do? You surround yourself with people who know more than you do, right? That's another nuance that I've learned. So I went searching for this gal I read in a book. Winona LaDuke is a famous Native American activist. She wrote a book called All My Relations, and there in that is a chapter on Debbie Tewa. Installs solar on the Hopi Reservation in Arizona. She's an installer, she's an electrician. I thought, that's who I need to work with. Debbie, I need you to teach me not to electrocute myself. Yeah. That's the bottom line. And she happened to be in school at the time. And I said, Debbie, let me hire you. Come work with me. I need help. You're the right person. You're the exact person I need. So I sought her out. Then it became, oh, maybe I could have a job description. And lo and behold, the Energy Policy Act defined the mission of Indian Energy to provide technical assistance, help further the Indian goals of each tribe, and capacity building, human capacity building. Well, to me, that's an intern. I'm going to build up the capacity of a young person who could possibly be a leader, could possibly work above me, and he does. Tommy Jones was one of my interns. Now he's my federal sponsor for my work. I'm growing my own, so that's what I'm looking for. And you find, how do you keep that a niche? In my applications, I have an essay that I have them answer. That weeds out a lot because, quite frankly, folks, if you're going to read a job posting, answer what's in the job posting. Don't just say, I looked at it. I've asked for 5 essays and I see this resume and there's no answers to any questions. It's like, you didn't read the job posting, did you? So that screens out a lot of people right there. And then when I read it, it's like, I need to know this about you. I need to know that. And then when I do have a in-person or video interview, then I ask more in-depth questions. You only have 90 days to work with me. And what do you think you're going to be able to get out of this internship program? What do you bring to the table? Because I'm swimming as fast as I can in the deep end of the water. I'll help you if you need a light preserver, but I need you to perform at that level too. So that's kind of my expectation and that I've set.
Excellent. So if you had to share with the audience, three things that you're always looking for in an intern or a mentee, they don't have to be the most important. They just have to be three things that you're always looking for. What are those things?
I need to see an objective in your resume. I don't just want a template. What is your objective? Is it written for that job or is it a generic one? You need to write it for the job. Tailor it to that job posting. The others, I need to know beyond your academics, how have you given back to the community? Are you part of a student organization? Have you done the Houses for Humanity where you did some construction? If you're a civil engineer and you did that kind of thing, that's helpful. You know how to use a hammer and nail. Although engineers, we don't always do that, but we have to know how to put things together. And then I think the third is, be honest if something's happened. I mean, just say I took off a year due to family obligations and illness and leave it at that. That way, when I look at your transcripts, there's a hole right there. You already filled a hole. Then I can move beyond that and say, sure, it's a great candidate. Don't bury things. You don't have to be blunt, but you can be very good in summarizing. Here's what happened. Don't get into details, but I moved beyond that and now I'm back in school full time.
I agree. I think there's a lot there too about owning where you've been, because it, contributed to where you are now. So I think, don't try to bury it or, sideswipe, but just, as you said, just come with it. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of more minutes left, and I have a couple of questions here that I think that we would be, I think that we need to hear from you on.
Sure.
It's clear there is a strength in your commitment to walk in beauty that comes from the Navajo identity. Can you talk a bit about that? And what are some ways that we can find that kind of strength when we don't have such a strong concept of balance in our own cultural backgrounds and traditions?
I think you can learn from multiple cultures in the world. If you pick Navajo, go to the websites that talk about it. It's a holistic approach. So some people think about it that way. It's all around you. There's a prayer that we have that's walking in beauty. You have a ceremony, but it's the notion of you're going forward. You leave beauty on the sides of you, behind you, above you. You're conscious of yourself in the world. You're not just here doing one thing. You're a whole person being a part of a system, whether it's the earth, your community, your school, even in your own household. Are you doing things in a positive way? That's a philosophy that I think you can take a hold of. I hope that's straightforward enough.
Excellent. And I think this will be our last question here, and it links firmly in with that. Sandra, have you experienced dissonance between cultural tradition and strong female leadership? And if so, how did you navigate that?
I built a reputation of good work. So if you didn't think I was going to be good at it as a woman, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm a very good worker. I know what I know. I'll learn to communicate the way you want me to, but I'm giving you everything I got. If you can't see me for me, then I need to do things so you say, hey, she's got black hair and brown skin. It's not going to change. She's a good person to do the job. I think that's the bottom line. Build that reputation of a good worker, a good person, somebody you want to be around.
Sandra, I think I speak for everyone here who can't speak right now because they're muted, but you are someone we all want to be around. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending this hour here with us, for going to bed early last night, for fitting it in your day, for making room for us. It was such a pleasure. For everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for being here. If you're watching this later as a recording, thank you for being with us here today digitally. Sandra, it was such a pleasure. Thank you again. Everyone signing off from Stanford.
Thank you.